Hey folks, I hope you're all doing well. It is a rainy afternoon here in Texas. Today I'm going to taking a look at Peter Monn and at what his ultimate life purpose is here on Earth. Interesting. So I've already been shuffling a little bit before I came on camera. And I've already been getting some cards flipped over. We're going to discover what they mean here in just a second, but I'm going to be performing a Grand Tableau on what Peter is here on Earth ultimately to do. Why is he here on Earth? When we shuffle here, around here we shuffle until Spirit tells me to stop. Okay, I'm going to lay them out. Okay, folks, let's take a look at the heart of the matter here. I see some cycles of social engagement here. Yeah, this is going to be about his social media career. And there are some things that, he's, even at his experience level, even at his maturity level, that he's not terribly aware of how these cycles repeat necessarily. Or he might be the kind of person to perform that kind of introspection, but he might not be there at this he might not be thinking in this particular direction at this time. But the heart of the matter is he is part of a cycle of basically he's supposed to be in social media for a particular reason, and I can see that it's a fast-moving reason. Yeah. Chasing down difficulties, hunting down difficulties, if you will, or even talking about how difficult it is to be in the drama sphere, if you will. So he talks about it persistently. He's supposed to be doing what he's doing right now. Talking about drama, the fast-moving stuff, he chases it down, as you can see. It's kind of interesting. He's the kind of, think of an old-fashioned picture of a dog chasing a rider on a horse, for instance. That's kind of what I'm getting here. He's the one who chases after the news, quite literally. He's doing what he's supposed to be doing. I can see in his heart of the matter. In his cards of fate, I can see that he's on a journey when it comes to love and about finding out what the true meaning of love is. And I can see that that's connected here with his husband. Peter appears over here, husband appears right over here. And this is not, once again, about woman or man. This is about anima and animus, which is in all of us. We all have balances of anima and animus inside of us. But I see here in the cards of fate that the things that he discusses in social media, the stories that he chases, quite literally, are things that are here to help him in his relationship with his husband. Whenever things come up with his husband that are challenging for him to address, it's like he learns from other people's mistakes and uses those lessons without having to make those mistakes himself. Excuse me. Sneeze come up. My nose was itching for a reason. Maybe it's just allergies, or maybe there's something to this. But it's interesting. Being a social commentator is something that Peter uses to become a better person for himself and for his partner. So earlier I said that he might not be that aware, but now I'm realizing that this is a childlikeness, not a childishness. Childishness is about, I'll put that back down. Childishness would be about not taking responsibility for behavior, for action. But Peter does all of that. I'd say that he looks at life from a very childlike perspective, in the sense that he's excited and bubbly and looks forward to the future, looks to the past for how he could be doing things better in the future. This is a persistent cycle of improvement, childlikeness, not childishness, which earlier I was getting, some really incredible downloads about how cool Peter is, about how thrilled his guiding spirits are, how thrilled the universe is that Peter is doing what he's doing. He's basically doing exactly what he should be doing, and he's doing it correctly. These kinds of readings are always fun to do because, I've been talking about spiritual manure in the past couple of readings, and that gets old eventually. This is refreshing. So let's take a look at some columns going back and forth. We'll take a look at this as going from the past to the present. I should say to the future. So past, present, and in the future. I can see right now that he's dealing with there's some maybe destructive patterns within the family that he's had to conquer with his childlikeness, saying, there is something better in this world for me. This isn't it. These destructive family patterns are not the end all be all for me. I am going to break them. And I see him as someone who has, and who has done so very quickly. It took a lot of difficulty. Look at this. This is the mountain. He defeated them quickly. Well, maybe not quickly, but he did this persistently. And he did this, you could say, not at a gallop, but at a canter, if you will, not at a trot either. But he worked hard at this. I can see that he worked persistently at this. This is someone who is, now I don't know whether Peter is a psychic of himself, or if he would like to be one. I know that he has talked about psychics in the past. In fact, it's how I've been able to find some other really neat psychics. But I see him as being a very intuitive individual who flows, who he gets a message. He he gets a gut feeling, not a message. I would call it a message, but he gets gut feelings, and he follows those gut feelings really, particularly when it comes to his husband. And I know that his husband lands on the anchor, and that's absolutely what I would associate with a long-term marriage like this, for instance. Well, we love to see it landing on the anchor, but I see him flowing with his intuition. It's possible that he grew up with some family patterns, maybe some family members who divorced, got back together, divorced again, got back together, dated other people again. It may be that he had cycles of marriages that he saw that kind of moved quickly for him, that were unstable. And it made him think twice about bringing that into his own relationship. There were some real changes that went on underneath all the work that he did while he was getting sober. He was also getting his ideas about relationships together. It's a really, really neat thing that he's doing. So it's interesting that we were talking about the garden, and that landed on the bouquet, which is part of his heart of the matter. He's a very public individual. It's possible that being in the public eye is in his birth chart. In fact, I'm getting from Spirit that it is in his birth chart, that he was always going to be a certain kind of famous, right? Always going to be there. I see him, though, being a kind of a private individual when it comes to, in spite of the fact that he's famous, There's still stuff that he keeps from the public, and I would expect that from someone who has spent most of his life not famous, right? You can tell a difference between people who became famous at an early age versus people who became famous, later in life, after they've had jobs, after they've had experiences, been in relationships, been out of relationships. You can absolutely tell a difference. Like the older people who became famous after they went through their Saturn return, for instance. Peter might be coming up on his Saturn return. I'm not sure exactly how old he is. We'll look into that later. But there's just a stability about him that he has. He's in the public eye, but he's pretty goddamn unshakable, right? Again, he's someone who chases down these interesting, he's very much a social butterfly. Even if he wasn't a social commentator, he'd be a social butterfly in some kind of context. Always wished and hoped for I think it's interesting that man appears just across the way from his husband, who is in the anchor position. Just a very steady kind of individual. It's like these two men were made to rise together. These are star-crossed lovers. They are made to rise together. And I'm looking at like this knighting. We call this knighting, kind of like a chess position. Letter on letter. This was not just a star-crossed lovers kind of situation. This was a spiritual contract that they have fulfilled together. I think that's fucking incredible, actually. That's really cool. No, these people were made, their stars were made to rise together. They are star-crossed lovers. This was a twin flame connection. This was a marriage made in heaven. Match made in heaven, if you want to come at from that angle, but these guys were meant to be together, basically. Yeah. It looks like there's more going on right here. Honest to God, we could read Grand Tableaus for a really, really long time, for hours, for days, if you wanted to get into some really crazy deep stuff. I want to get into this row, and then we'll get into some 9-card spreads. So we've got some interesting choices here. Choices to deep success. I choose success. I choose to learn how to be successful, and the reward is the marriage from heaven, basically. I choose, look at that. I choose to continually stay in my childlike nature and explore the world from the perspective of a happy kid. A mature, happy kid, should we say. This is someone who has persistently chosen to be a cool person. Yeah, a cycle, consistently. We'll get into the snake here in just a second. I think both of these cards flipped up when I was shuffling. This one off camera, and this one, I think just before I started rolling, or just after I started rolling. It's interesting. We'll look into that in just a second. But I feel like he's here to expose this. There's a lot going on. I apologize. We're looking at this row. We'll look at that in just a second. But he's made choices that have brought him this connection with his husband right here. This is revolutionary for him. And it's like he's doing stuff to relieve karmic debts, possibly for future lifetimes. There's like less karmic work for him to relieve in the future because he did such good things in this lifetime. Yeah, we looked at that. Men made to rise together. Their stars were made to rise together. An intuitive individual. In this case, this is about the white lily, not the red lily. Red lily is associated with sexuality. White is associated with maturity, retirement, establishment, stability, that kind of thing. This is someone who chose, where is it? Yeah, this is someone who chose to learn about how to be stable and said, I'll do what it takes to become a stable, healthy, happy individual. Come hell or high water, I will learn I will find mentors. I will find people who will teach me how to do this. Peter's a genuinely incredible individual. Yeah, sun, anchor associated with the husband. Again, these stars are meant to rise together. The sun is a large-ass star, if you will. I see success being here for a long time because of Peter's childlike nature. We'll get into that in just a second because I saw destruction appearing underneath the childlike. There may be some destructive child patterns that he learned from childhood that he chose to break. Because here we've got the sun. He's been successful for a long time at breaking these childhood patterns. And I see that there's a 9-card spread right here. We'll get into that in just a second if Spirit wills it. Yep, moon. The intuition that moves underneath everything that he does. So there may be something in the future that his intuition says, be quiet about this. He's a very social individual right here. He moves quickly. I said social butterfly there. Literally, social butterfly. But I'm seeing here that he's going to have to keep quiet about something. This is about something that's deeply valuable. A love connection, possibly again to do with his husband. Love has revolutionized him, and in the future, love is going to be the incredibly valuable thing that he's going to treasure. His intuition is going to say, keep quiet about this thing that you love so much. Key appears on the stars. If you want your stars to continue to rise together, if you want to have wishes, hopes, and dreams continually together, you're going to need to make love the centerpiece of your relationship, and that might mean having to leave social media in order to put those love relationships first, and Peter is absolutely the kind of person to do that. He'll find other ways of making money. The universe will find other ways to shower money on him. Absolutely. There's so many synchronicities and matchups here with I can't, there's so, like, I know you guys can see it, but it's like he's going to put an end to something that's been kind of underneath the surface, and we might be able to get into Tower here in just a second. There's a lot going on here. He's going to put an end to some things that ultimately aren't good for his relationships. He's come so far, he's absolutely not going to compromise how far he's come, and if that means that he's going to drop some stuff, he's going to do it. He's that kind of person. So he might be dropping social media in the future if it no longer serves him. He might be moving on to something else entirely. So I went like this. That's the future. That's like the far distant future. Let's say 5-6 years in the future, give or take, depending on how things happen. He might be moving to Canada in that time frame. He may not be. Might be moving out of the United States. I saw in 2023's reading and in a post Roe v. Wade, what's next for the LGBT community, I did a reading into what's going on there, and I saw that a lot of the American LGBT community was going to have to leave because things were going to get too politically bad for the community to live there. So I suspect that Peter's going to have to leave at some point because it's just going to be safer with his husband, with their pets if they've got them. But I suspect that that might be something that happens in the future. That might be some of what's going on right here. Maybe not, okay? Tell you what, let's get into Peter right over here because I see that he's facing the past, which I think is interesting, and he's in the past. It's like his ego, like he's chosen to put ego and cycles, like he's chosen to put his old self in the past. He chooses to put his old self in the past. The stork would remind me of the saying that if a man crosses a river, he's not the same man, that's not the same river. And again, I'm butchering that particular saying, okay? But I get that he's the kind of person who changes gradually over time, and in some cases really, really quickly, depending on the circumstance. He adapts really easily. but he makes sure to change. He makes sure not to do the same thing twice if it really didn't work out, or even if it did, maybe he wants to do something with a little bit more pizzazz. But he doesn't do the same thing twice, not really. He's an evolving individual. This is someone who chases deception within himself, chases selfishness within himself. Yeah, he saw how selfishness isolated himself. And that's kind of like the center spread right there. In the past, Peter saw how destructive there were some maybe lying patterns that he had, some patterns of lies that were really easy for him to say that he chose to bust. This is again in the past, and it influences how he's able to move forward in the future. It might be easier for him to identify liars in the drama community, or might be able to identify liars within like VIPs or celebrities, just because he's been that person and he's stopped being that person. He's evolved since then. What was this? Yeah. Selfishness that isolates. He's defeated that aspect of himself. That's in the past. House bouquet. Here we go. So he's always been a social individual. I feel like his family his family of origin was highly social. It might have even been like a bit of a survival tactic. There might have been times where things were rough financially, and being social was what taught Peter that this is how you survive. In fact, I'm seeing here that the stork appears on the rider, and that's about speed. He quickly learned that this is how you do things if you're going to get along in the world. He made a choice, though, to be a loving individual, to be an intuitive individual. I believe stork, yeah. I also remember he landed on the house his house is associated with intuition in this particular read. So this is someone who is a very watery individual in the sense that he's close to his emotions, but he's not overwhelmed by them. He's very much a King of Cups, very intuitive, right? Peter might make a really cool psychic. He might make a really cool tarot reader, a really neat medium if he's been blessed with that particular gift, okay? But as a psychic, I think that he would be an amazing psychic person if that was something that he wanted to do. Family, learned how to be social. Yeah, and I'm getting that, like, once again, there were some really destructive patterns within his family that were abusive. Yeah, abusive. There were some abusive family patterns that maybe he's talked about this. I'm sorry, I haven't seen every single video that he's ever made, but he may have talked about how some family members might have been genuinely abusive to him, and he might still be dealing with that trauma today, to be honest. And as we saw earlier, he has made choices basically I don't know how many times I can say to be a better person. He chose to become a better person, and the universe rewarded him with incredible rewards that were just waiting in the wings, basically, for Peter to have. Basically, the universe said, you don't have to be defined by your past, and your family patterns don't need to dictate where you end up. You can come out of dirt and become a beautiful lotus flower, effectively. And I see that's kind of what's going on here. So it starts from Peter kind of imitating his family, right? Like a lot of kids do, but then he grew up and has been richly rewarded well into the future if he can keep it. And he can. I believe that he's the kind of individual who can. So I want to take a look at more of the childlike aspect for Peter. And this is someone that that he will have to, now that I'm looking at this and I'm looking at the context with this particular, like having to cut things that have been kind of under the surface, like bubbling, like eventually this is going to not work well anymore. The social media aspect. Yeah. It's like the deception, like there's going to be some deception in the future that's going to be just too much, and he's going to say, I'm out. It might bring up some really dark stuff within himself that he hasn't dealt with yet. Yeah, there's some confusion that they're in the possibly that has to do with his family. Again, might be some family patterns that he has to break, that there might be some stuff in the YouTube, Twitch, basically the social media atmosphere that is just too much for Peter. And I think that this is kind of interesting because I saw the same thing for, Adam McIntyre. I saw the same thing for Adam McIntyre. Adam McIntyre is also here to expose and talk about things that are deeply destructive. And I saw that Adam was at risk for developing like stress-related illnesses because he would work so hard to uncover those kinds of things. And I'm concerned that that's kind of what's going on with Peter, that there's going to be a point where he says, this is awful. This isn't fun anymore, and I have to tap out. So I'm wondering if Peter isn't going to have some of his childlike nature destroyed because of whatever's coming up in the future. I have no idea. We might do that like what's in the cards for YouTube or whatever, wherever this is coming from. But for whatever reason, I feel like Trisha Paytas is like a corner from whence this miasma starts. It's like things start from there and then like things catch fire and pull up rug threads starting from her. Like other people, like something's going on in the future that's just awful. It's going to be like a YouTube hellscape, basically. Google might throw up its hands and just say, we give up. And sell it. Like, I don't know, like, this is like, Peter's going to say, this isn't for me anymore. This isn't for me. This isn't for my husband anymore. I value my mental health. I value my sanity. I value my intelligence. I value my mind over all this shit that he's going to be seeing in the future. I said the next 5-ish, 6-ish years or so. Let's see what happens with that, okay? I'm continuing to look at the surroundings around this. He's going to have to make a choice in how he chooses to establish himself, and he's going to choose to follow his heart. I see him saying, my husband comes first, my love relationships come first, my friendships come first, and if YouTube isn't a loving place, if the community isn't a loving place for me anymore, I will establish my place somewhere else. That is Emperor energy right there. I know that it says child, but that is, again, the childlike Emperor, the Emperor that says, I have my inner adult and my inner child in balance and a good relationship with each other. That is the energy I'm getting from him. Yeah. So, difficulties with selfishness within the community. I'm seeing an abusive community. It's crazy how symmetrical. And again, you can see all these matchups within these cards. There's stuff in his family that's going to come up in these social situations. He's going to say, no, I'm not going to be a part of this. This isn't fun anymore for me to discuss. It's going to revolutionize what he wants. He's going to want different things as a result of this social explosion, basically, that's going on sometime in the future. We're going to have to do a reading into that, dude. Yeah, deciding to establish himself in success, using intuition to move himself and his husband out of where he needs to go. And he's going to keep quiet about this. There's that childlike energy. This is a persistent child who goes over mountains and keeps their mouth shut. This is the childlike Emperor. Yeah, his education taught him some stuff. This was a wise kid. Peter may have been said to be an old soul as a kid, just because he went through a lot of shit, and he chooses to come out on the other end like this. High vibing. Earth angel. Spirit guides could not be more pleased with Peter Monn. They love him to pieces. They love how he's handling his journey to pieces. They like that the ship appears in his cards of fate, and they love that love appears in his cards of fate. Love is his religion. Right? I don't know, I'm getting emotional right now. Maybe that's something that's valuable to him. Maybe that song, Love is My Religion, is meaningful to Peter. I don't know. Or maybe just that he values the people in his life so much. I see him continuing to value the people in his life a lot. I am enough. That's enough. I've had enough. I'm drained. Peter is a cool individual, but this was a draining reading. Peter has a lot coming up. Watching out for his health is going to be part of this. I have no doubt that he will take care of his health, but he has some stuff to watch out for in the future. There's stuff coming up for that he needs to be cautious of. Put his health first, put his relationships first, put himself first. Okay, folks, that's enough. Okay, y'all take care.